Her phone lit up the bedroom at midnight, and in that pale glow, I watched the truth unravel. I kept my eyes half closed, body still, breath steady, pretending to be asleep. She didn't know I was awake, didn't know I'd been noticing the changes. The way she guarded her phone, the sudden late-night, work emails, the distracted kisses that ended too quickly. I didn't need explanations anymore. I needed proof. Her thumbs moved quickly across the screen, each tap sharp in the silence. The light caught her face, softening her features, and I saw something that made my chest tighten. She was smiling. Not the tired, polite smile she gave me over dinner, but a real one, alive, the kind reserved for a secret you can't resist. I shifted just enough to catch a glimpse. A name at the top of the chat, short, vague. I couldn't make out the words, only fragments before she scrolled too quickly. Miss you. Can't stop thinking about last time. And then, as if to twist the knife, an emoji she hadn't used with me in months, flushed cheeks, heat between the lines. She bit her lip while reading, the same unconscious gesture she used to make when we first started dating, back when sex was constant and every touch sparked fire. My body remembered that fire instantly, the way her skin tasted, the way her nails used to dig into my back. But now, lying there in the dark, that memory stung. She wasn't biting her lip for me anymore. I fought the urge to roll over, to rip the phone from her hand and demand answers. Instead, I stayed frozen, watching. Anger pulsed beneath my skin, but so did something else, curiosity, cold and sharp. If I moved too soon, she'd delete it all, and the evidence would vanish. No, I had to let her keep digging her own grave. She typed again, slowly this time, as if savoring the words. I caught a phrase, wish I could feel you now. My throat went dry. She wasn't just talking. She was remembering, reliving, maybe even planning. Then, as quickly as it started, it ended. She locked her phone and slid it beneath the pillow, as though burying the secret beneath inches of fabric could keep it safe. She rolled toward me, slipping into the curve of my body like she always did. Her hand rested on my chest, fingers splaying lightly across my skin. The warmth of her touch almost broke me, because it felt real, familiar, comforting. For a second, I wanted to believe nothing had changed. Her lips brushed my shoulder. My pulse jumped, not from desire but from conflict. My body wanted to pull her closer, to let her mouth wander down my chest, to erase suspicion with sweat and skin. But my mind replayed the glow of the screen, the words I'd glimpsed, the bite of her lip meant for someone else. The tension between wanting her and resenting her almost tore me apart. I lay awake until dawn, replaying everything in my head. The way her breathing had quickened, the small, private smile, the words I wasn't supposed to see. 3 weeks ago, when she slid on top of me and whispered that she was too tired afterward, was she already sharing her energy with someone else? At breakfast, she moved through the kitchen humming softly, pouring coffee like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, lips warm, her hair brushing my jaw. The intimacy should have soothed me. Instead, it felt staged, as if she were playing the role of a wife she'd already abandoned. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked, her voice light, casual. "Yeah, I lied. Fine." She smiled, but I saw it now for what it was, a mask. And behind that mask lived the glow of her phone at midnight. That night changed everything. I knew I couldn't confront her yet, not without more. I needed to know who she was texting, what she was hiding, how deep this went. If she thought I was blind, I'd use it. I would play the part of the sleeping husband a little longer. Because the truth had already begun to show itself, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. By morning, the plan had a pulse. Not a full strategy, just the first steady thump of intention. If she could turn our bed into a stage for secrets, I could turn the house into a quiet lab. I didn't need a confession. I needed data. She likes long showers, steam and citrus shampoo, music from the tiny speaker balanced on the sink. That gave me 11 minutes on average. I timed it once without meaning to. When the bathroom door clicked and the fan began its low drone, I moved. Her phone lay where she always left it while getting ready, face down on the dresser, case scuffed at the corners. I lifted it like it might wake and bite. Face ID didn't care for me, but I'd watched her unlock it enough to know her passcode when Face ID failed. For digits, a pattern her fingers had taught the glass. The screen bloomed open, bright as a secret. Messages first. Clean, too clean. Conversations pinned at the top that looked ordinary. A group chat with coworkers, reminders from a yoga studio. But the one I wanted wasn't there. I scrolled farther, felt the absence like a missing tooth. She had deleted a thread. Recently. Photos, then. Thumbnails of dinners, a cat meme, screenshots of flights. I checked the recently deleted folder, emptied. Clever. Or scared. Maybe both. I opened files. Most people forget files. She hadn't. Nothing obvious in iCloud Drive. I searched by file type, found a cluster of PDFs named for receipts, harmless. Then one image with a meaningless string for a title, edited 2 nights ago. I tapped. It was a photo of her desk at work, harmless again, except the edit metadata said markup used. Why mark up a desk? I pinched and zoomed. A blurred square hovered where a sticky note should have been. She'd scrubbed out whatever had been written there. My throat tasted metallic. The water was still running. I had time. I opened Settings Privacy Location. Significant Locations told its own quiet story. Our house, of course, her office, a cafe we sometimes visited, and an address on the other side of town that didn't belong to us or her job. Visits recorded late, 11:47 p.m., 12:31 a.m. 2 nights in a row last week. My chest tightened. I copied the address to my phone and felt something terrible and steady settle in my ribs. Confirmation. The shower turned off. I locked her phone, set it exactly where it had been, and slid back into the hallway like a thief getting high on morality. She came out in a towel, hair damp, skin glowing warm from the heat. She smiled, that slow, casual curve that used to mean, let's be late together. The sight of her made my body react before my brain could intervene, skin prickling, a pull low in my stomach. I hated that my desire didn't ask permission from my anger. Coffee, she said, the towel edging higher as she tightened it. My eyes lingered a heartbeat too long. She noticed. She always notices. In a minute, I said, forcing my voice to normal. She brushed past me, the heat of her thigh grazing my jeans. That tiny friction ignited a flash of memory, her legs around my waist, her breath tangled with mine, the way she'd say my name when we lost rhythm and found it again. Sex used to be our language. Now every touch felt like a translation I couldn't trust. While she dressed, I went to my office and pulled up Google Timeline on my own account, then hers on the shared computer with our family password. Most couples share things because it's convenient. I was suddenly grateful for past convenience. Her timeline loaded slowly, then stamped the same address into a map with heartless precision. A dot pulsing at midnight. A path back home at 1:19 a.m., twice last week. Once the week before. I printed the map and slid the paper into a folder. Not to confront her now, only to remind myself later that I hadn't imagined any of this. At lunch, I said I might be working late. She said she might be, too, and didn't meet my eyes. The lie didn't offend me. The ease did. That afternoon I met with a friend who fixes problems for tech-illiterate executives. I didn't say, my wife might be cheating. I said I needed to back up a phone in case of data loss. He didn't ask questions. He gave me a small adapter and instructions. Plug in her phone, make a local encrypted backup to my laptop, and a program would parse deleted fragments of messages and attachments. People forget that deleted isn't the same as gone, he said. It's just hiding. I held the adapter like a talisman all the way home. Night fell with the soft insistence of routine. We ate together. We talked about nothing important. Parking, an email from my sister, a sale at the hardware store. She laughed at something I said, head tipping back, throat exposed. Even now, I wanted to lean in, to taste the skin just below her ear, to salvage what we'd been with mouth and hands. I hated that I wanted it. I hated that wanting her made me feel complicit. She went to shower again, second round before bed, a habit she adopts when nerves prick her. I counted to 60, then 90, then moved. Phone. Adapter. Laptop opened, dimmed. The backup began. Spinning wheel, progress bar crawling like it feared what it would uncover. Water pounded tile on the other side of the wall. My heartbeat kept time with the status percentage. 81% when the water shut off. 90. 100. Complete. I yanked the cable, locked the phone, replaced it, and slid the laptop under a magazine, just as the bathroom door opened and steam spilled into the hall. She came to bed smelling like soap. She fetched her phone, glanced at it, then tucked it under her pillow again. Her hand found my chest in the dark, moved lower, paused. "You're tense," she whispered. "Long day," I said. She kissed my jaw, then my throat, a path I used to follow down her body. Heat flared. God, it would be so easy to surrender, to let sex blur the edges until morning, to pretend the glow of last night never happened. But the map in my desk drawer and the backup on my laptop were brand new anchors. I couldn't drift. "Tomorrow," I said softly, turning and pulling her into my arms so the rejection didn't feel like a slap. She tucked her face against my chest, disappointed but not wounded, and soon her breathing evened out. In the other room, my laptop waited. I lay awake, counting ceilings and sins. At dawn, while she still slept, I opened the program that reads what phones try to forget. Threads emerged like bones from sand. Most were ordinary. One wasn't. The contact name was an initial and an emoji, lazy camouflage. Message fragments stitched themselves together. "Still thinking about last time. Next week, same place." A blurred photo thumbnail flagged as expunged, still recoverable at a low resolution. I clicked. The image resolved into angles, a hotel headboard, a wrist with a bracelet I had bought her for our anniversary, a mouth half out of frame. Not proof of sex, but absence of innocence. I stared until the screensaver tried to save me. It failed. Work called. I ignored it. She stirred. I closed the laptop. When she walked into the kitchen, hair messy, wearing my t-shirt, my body betrayed me again. Want and grief crashing into each other, leaving me quiet. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please," I said, and reached for my folder instead of her. The investigation had drawn first blood. Not enough to end anything. More than enough to know the next cut would be deeper. I wouldn't confront her yet. I wanted the who, the where, the why. And if I was going to be carved out of my old life, I would be the one holding the knife steady. Tonight, I decided I'd follow the dot on the map. Whatever waited at that address would be the truth, and truth, I'd learned, glows even darker than a midnight screen. I parked 2 blocks away, engine off, lights down, the night thick with the kind of silence that makes you hear your own blood. Her car was already there. The same one she drove to yoga, to brunch with friends, to work. But tonight it was parked outside a house I'd never seen before. 2 stories, curtains drawn, one window glowing faint amber. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until the leather creaked. The map on my phone had been precise, the timestamps cold and irrefutable. This was the address she'd slipped to at midnight while I pretended to be asleep. I should have felt vindicated, proof at last, but all I felt was a hollow ache that settled behind my ribs. For 10 minutes I sat there, watching. A curtain shifted once, a shadow passing behind it. My pulse jumped. Was it her? Was it whoever she was meeting? The urge to storm in, to rip open the door and see, nearly pulled me out of the car. But then what? Scream? Beg? Break? No. I wasn't ready for the end. I needed more than suspicion. I needed truth I could hold in my hands like a blade. I grabbed my phone, zoomed in, snapped a photo of her car in the driveway. License plate visible, timestamp stamped in the corner. Evidence. My evidence. Time dragged. I thought about her at home, the way she laughed when I'd catch her in the kitchen and lift her onto the counter, kissing her until she wrapped her legs around me. That memory hit me now with the sting of irony. While I clung to the shadow of our sex life, she was giving her body, her breath, her fire somewhere else. My chest felt heavy, equal parts anger and hunger. The front door opened. I ducked low, heart hammering. She stepped out for just a second, framed by the glow of the hallway light. My wife. Hair tied back, her posture casual, but her smile, it was the same one I'd seen in bed, lit by the glow of her phone. She turned, speaking to someone still inside, laughing softly before closing the door again. I clenched my fists so hard my nails cut my palms. That laugh had belonged to me. When she went back in, I started the car and drove off before I did something reckless. On the ride home, my mind spun. Who was inside? A coworker? A stranger? Someone we both knew? Every possibility burned, each one worse than the last. At home, I slipped into bed minutes before she did. She smelled faintly of soap and perfume. She curled against me, her skin warm, her lips brushing my jaw as though nothing had happened. My body reacted instantly, traitorously, heat rising in my gut, the ache of wanting her even as bile climbed my throat. I wanted to push her away, but I pulled her closer instead, burying my face in her hair, memorizing the scent, the weight of her thigh against mine. Was this intimacy or evidence? I couldn't tell anymore. She whispered, "Missed you today," her voice soft and playful. The words made my stomach turn. She was lying. I knew she was, but the warmth in her tone made me want to believe. My hand slid down her back, fingertips grazing her hip. She pressed into me, humming lightly, a sound that used to mean she was ready to be taken. Desire flared, sharp and furious, tangled with betrayal. But I stopped. I couldn't. Not yet. Not when her lips still tasted of lies. "I'm tired," I murmured, rolling away. She sighed, disappointed, but soon her breathing settled. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The car, the house, the laugh, the silhouette behind the curtain. Tomorrow I'd dig deeper. Tomorrow I'd know who was in that house. And when I knew, I'd decide whether to burn it all down or use the fire to build something else. Morning turned sharp around the edges. Coffee didn't taste like anything. The city looked like a photo I couldn't step into. I kept seeing that house. Amber window, drawn curtains, her laugh framed in the doorway. I needed to turn vague pain into clean facts. Facts cut. Facts heal. I started with the tools that didn't require leaving my desk. County records, property search, the unglamorous places truth likes to hide. The parcel number tied to a management company and a month-to-month lease. No owner name on display, just a P.O. box and a phone tree that promised a callback. Useless, for now. Next, my laptop. The backup I'd pulled from her phone waited like a locked drawer. I opened the extraction again and filtered for fragments created near midnight. A handful of messages stitched themselves together, more complete this time. Tonight, same place. Doors open. Then a line that woke every nerve ending in my body. Still smell you on my pillow. Heat spiked through me. Anger, jealousy, and something uglier. Want. My mind threw up flashes I didn't ask for. Her thigh hooking my hip, her nails on my shoulders, her whisper when she wanted me deeper. Sex had always been the language we spoke best, the place we understood each other without words. Now those same images felt like evidence in a trial where I was both witness and accused. A contact name surfaced as metadata, just an initial and an emoji. Nothing else. Lazy camouflage. But my brain was a hound now, nose low to the ground, searching for any scent. Moon. Star? L. At noon I drove back to the neighborhood and played the part I'd learned as a kid when I wanted answers adults wouldn't give. A man with a clipboard and a smile. "Hi." Quick survey from the neighborhood association. I told the woman in the corner house, gesturing vaguely at the street. "Just confirming names for our holiday list, so we don't miss anyone with the wreath deliveries." She beamed, eager to be helpful. "Oh, the renter? She's sweet. New here. Keeps to herself." "She," I said lightly. "Do you know her name?" "First name only. Lena, I think." She tapped her temple. "Or Lena. Pretty. Tall. Dark hair. Pilates posture." The kind of description that makes a picture even if you've never seen the subject. The name hit me in two places at once, present and past. L. And a memory, my best friend's wife. L. A moon emoji in her Instagram bio for years because she liked how it felt, whatever that meant. We'd double-dated with them, toasted birthdays, shared jokes that went on too long. I pushed the coincidence away. Cities are full of L names. Don't make a leap your heart will regret. I thanked the neighbor and walked on, playing the part of a man who belonged. Reaching the house, I didn't go to the front porch. Instead, I drifted along the sidewalk to the clustered mailboxes by the curb. 3 thin envelopes for the unit were jammed into the slot, the flap of one sticking out just enough to show a return address sticker on the edge. Pale gray. Embossed initials in the corner, LH. My throat tightened. LH. My best friend's wife, Lena Hart. It could be another LH, I told myself. Hart isn't rare. But the universe, once coy, was suddenly chatty. The HOA newsletter sat folded behind the letters, a resident note scrawled on the margin in quick, tidy loops I recognized from 100 dinner place cards and thank you notes. Package for Unit 4 left with 2. Thanks. Same hand. Same flourish on the K. I'd watched those letters dance across cards for years. I snapped a photo and stepped back before curiosity turned into trespass. A dog barked from somewhere behind the fence, a single alarm. I kept walking, letting the street spit me out into the safety of anonymity. In the car, I let my forehead rest against the steering wheel. The speculation I'd been keeping at bay charged in. If this was Lena's place, then the person inside last night, the person who made my wife laugh soft and private, wasn't a man. The thought rewired the whole map in my head. The checking out other men in restaurants I'd imagined? Irrelevant. The sudden distance during our kisses? Reframed. Her recent jokes with Lena in group chats I dismissed as girls being girls. Rescored with a frequency I hadn't heard because I wasn't listening for it. An image flashed. My wife and Lena side by side at our kitchen island last Christmas, sleeves rolled to their elbows, flour on their wrists, heads leaning toward each other to read the recipe card, hips bumping lightly. My chest burned with a heat that wasn't only rage. There was a charged electricity in that memory I hadn't named then. Now it had a name and an address. Back home, I tried to work and failed. Every document on my screen dissolved into the same 2 letters. At 5, she texted, running late. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you. I stared at the last 2 words, neat as pressed flowers, and imagined them turning brittle in my hands. I wrote back, okay, be safe. I wanted to add something petty, something that would sting, but restraint is a tool. I needed to keep mine sharp. Before dark, I went to our bedroom and opened her closet. I knew her clothes like I knew a map I'd drawn myself. The silk blouse she wore when she wanted to feel powerful, the soft t-shirt she stole from me after our first trip together, the perfume she reserved for nights when she wanted to be undeniable. I lifted the bottle, pressed the sprayer once, let the scent settle. Not the same one she'd carried last night when she slid into bed. Different. Warmer, with a note like amber and smoke. Not hers. I found the bottle in the bathroom trash, an empty sample vial tucked into tissue. The label was barely readable, but the brand was the one Lena had raved about the last time we'd all had drinks, turning her wrist to let my wife smell it, laughing when she dabbed a dot behind my wife's ear, so he'll never forget it. I hadn't. It was impossible to forget now. When she came home near 10, she moved through the door like a person who believed in her own version of honesty. She kissed my cheek, humming something under her breath. I inhaled automatically. Not soap this time. That amber smoke from the sample, softened now by the heat of her skin. The scent traced a line down my spine I hated for how precise it was. Hungry? I asked, voice mild. Starving, she said, opening the fridge, finishing half a yogurt standing at the counter the way she does when she's wrapped in afterglow and won't admit it. She caught me watching and smiled. What? Nothing. She came close, slipped her hand under my t-shirt, palm warm against my stomach. My muscles tightened, the reflex as old as us. She stepped even closer, breath feathering my neck. We could make up for the late dinner, she murmured, the suggestive tilt in her voice practiced and intoxicating. My body answered before my brain could, blood moving, breath hitching, an ache that begged me to surrender to muscle memory. I cupped her face, thumbs under her jaw, our mouths a whisper apart. For a second, I almost let everything go. Let sex be the bandage we'd always used when words failed. But the mailbox photo burned behind my eyes. LH. The scent I'd just smelled on her skin. The message about the pillow. The hum of desire turned into a low, steady anger I could ride instead of drown in. Tomorrow, I said, gentle, as if postponement were affection, not defense. She searched my eyes, then let it drop, flopping onto the couch with her phone. In the blue light, her face looked like a mask I once wore on Halloween. Familiar shape, wrong eyes. While she scrolled, I stood in the doorway and made myself a promise I'd never thought I'd need to make. I would not be reckless. I wouldn't accuse or guess or explode. I would replace every maybe with a yes, every hunch with an entry in a folder. And then, when there was nothing left for her to deny, I'd put the truth between us and see if it crushed us or if it burned clean enough to leave something salvageable. Before bed, I checked the backup program one more time, searching for a thread I might have missed. A new fragment had populated from the day's sync. Tomorrow, after 11, key under mat. Then a single line that made me feel weightless and heavy at once. I'll leave the back door open. A date stamp put it on the calendar like an appointment. I copied the line onto a note card and slid it into the folder with the mailbox photo and the map. My hands were steady. My breath, finally, was even. I turned off the light and crawled into bed. She rolled toward me in her sleep, leg hooking mine, a reflex older than every secret between us. I closed my eyes and let the pressure of her thigh remind me of everything I was about to risk and everything I refused to ignore. Tomorrow, I wouldn't sit in a car 2 blocks away. Tomorrow, I'd walk through a door someone promised to leave open. And whatever waited on the other side, I would stop pretending to be asleep. The note in the recovered message wasn't poetry. It was logistics. Tomorrow, after 11, key under mat, back door open. A sentence that stripped away the last layers of plausible deniability. She wasn't sneaking out to walk, or vent, or chase solitude. She was going to someone who expected her, invited her, left the door open for her like a lover confident she'd come. At 10:30, she kissed me, hair loose, lips warm, voice casual. Emails, then bed, she said, slipping into her office with her laptop. The lie was so soft, so rehearsed, it almost made me admire her. Almost. I waited 10 minutes, then another 5. Her office chair squeaked once, then silence. I stepped down the hall. The door was cracked. She wasn't inside. Her laptop sat open on a blank Word doc, the cursor blinking like it was mocking me. I walked back to the bedroom and looked at the dent in the pillow where her head had been. The mattress was still warm. I pressed my hand into the hollow, not sure if I wanted to curse or cry. By 11, I was in my car again. The night was heavy with heat, every street lamp buzzing faintly, as if even the city knew what I was about to see. Her car was already there when I turned the corner, parked neatly in front of the same house. Lights dimmed inside, except for the back room that glowed faintly yellow. A silhouette passed the curtain once, long hair, slim frame. My wife. I killed the engine, walked slow. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would echo against the quiet houses. The path to the back door was overgrown, grass brushing my jeans. And then I saw it, the mat. I lifted the edge, and there it was, the key, cold against my fingers. I slid it into the lock, turned. No resistance. The door opened with a sigh. The air smelled faintly of perfume, warm and smoky, amber with something sharper beneath. The same scent I'd caught on her skin last night. I stepped inside, each creak of the floorboard loud as thunder in my ears. Voices drifted from the back room, low and intimate. I moved closer. Can't stay long, my wife whispered. Another voice, softer, lower, unmistakably feminine. Just enough. My blood iced, then boiled. It wasn't a man. It wasn't some faceless stranger. It was Lena, my best friend's wife. I didn't need to see her face. I knew that voice as well as I knew my own. Countless dinners, double dates, holidays together. The woman who laughed at my jokes, hugged me at parties, sat at my table. I pressed my palm to the wall, steadying myself. Part of me wanted to burst in, to rip the curtain off the truth and drown them both in it. Another part, colder, clearer, told me to wait, to watch, to make sure this nightmare was carved in stone. A pause, then the faint rustle of clothes, a muffled moan, my wife's. Desire and betrayal twisted together until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. My chest hurt, my body reacting with the same heat that memory always stirred, but this time it was poisoned. I stepped back before I made a noise, before rage turned me reckless. Out the door, key slid back under the mat, lock clicking shut. My breath came ragged, hands trembling. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel, staring at the dark street until my eyes burned. I had the proof now. The address, the voices, the scent, the sound of my wife's desire, given to someone who wasn't me. And worse, someone who had once been family to us. Tomorrow, I decided, wouldn't be about suspicion anymore. Tomorrow would be about confrontation. And this time, I wouldn't be pretending to be asleep. I made it 3 blocks before the steering wheel shook with something that wasn't the road. Rage doesn't wait for morning. It swallows it. I swung back around, tires whispering on the asphalt, and parked crooked behind her car. If I left now, I'd carry that sound, her voice, that breathy little moan, like shrapnel under the skin. If I walked in, at least the wound would be clean. The key was still under the mat, exactly where the message said it would be. I didn't bother soft steps this time. The lock turned. The hinge complained. I crossed the narrow kitchen in 4 strides and pushed into the warm, amber-lit room. They froze the way deer do, bodies turned toward the flash, mouths half open, heat still clinging to the air. My wife's hair was messier than a lie. Lena's blouse hung off one shoulder, a pale strap bright against skin. The scent of that smoky amber perfume wrapped the room. It used to make me think of night and mystery. Now it smelled like the end of something I had loved. "Don't," my wife said first, as if the word could rewind time. She grabbed for the blanket. I watched her fingers tremble. Her eyes were huge, wet, desperate, like the first time she told me she wanted me, when we laughed at how fast we ripped each other's clothes. The memory punched me in the gut and tightened my throat at the same time. "Close the door," Lena said, voice low, not quite afraid, not quite calm. My best friend's wife. The woman who hugged me at barbecues and brought my wife flowers when she got a promotion. I looked at her and felt my jaw ache with restraint. "We should talk," she added, like this was a scheduling error we could tidy up. "We had years to talk," I said, and shut the door anyway. "You chose whispers." My wife stood, the blanket clutched to her chest. "Listen to me," she started, stepping closer, but I put up a hand and she stopped like I'd pressed a palm to her collarbone. The space between us throbbed. Heat, history, the muscle memory of sex that made my body want what my mind refused. I hated that the sight of her shoulder, bare and flushed, still pulled a response from me. I hated that I knew exactly where to touch to make her fall apart, and she had given those places away. "How long?" I asked. No name calling. No screaming. Just the only clock that mattered. My wife's mouth opened, closed. "A beat." "Months," she said too quickly. It wasn't a lie. It was a mask on a bigger number. "Since when?" I pressed. Lena stepped in, chin lifting. "Since last fall," she said, choosing honesty like a weapon. Her eyes flicked across my face, reading the damage. "Before you get theatrical, this isn't some cliché. It wasn't meant to hurt you." I laughed once, sharp enough to cut. "Then why does it feel exactly like hurt?" Silence spread, thick and electric. A neighbor's dog barked somewhere. A pipe ticked in the wall. I could hear my pulse in my ears. My wife reached out like she might touch my wrist, thought better of it, held her fingers in the air between us. "It started as talking," she said, wincing at her own smallness. "Late. About everything we weren't saying. Then one night after all four of us had dinner, she stopped. The image slammed into place. Our kitchen, 2 bottles of wine, laughter that lingered too long, Lena and my wife washing dishes shoulder to shoulder, their heads close enough to share breath. And then, I asked, because I needed her to say it, to anchor the shapeless thing in real words. "And then it didn't stop feeling like a mistake," she whispered. It felt like relief. Something inside me tilted. Relief. The word knocked against ribs, already sore. I looked at Lena. "You have a husband," I said. "You have my friend." Her mouth hardened. "So do you," she said, and for a second I saw steel. "You have a wife who slept next to you and edited herself smaller each week. You didn't ask why." I took a step toward her before I knew I had moved. My wife flinched. Lena didn't. She held my gaze with that infuriating calm people use when they believe they see more than you. "Don't rewrite this as neglect," I said. "Don't turn theft into critique." My wife's voice cracked. "I'm not rewriting anything. I broke something. Us, and I know it. But I also found something I had been starving for and didn't know how to ask you for." "What?" I snapped. "Secrets at midnight? Being wanted without having to be perfect first," she said, and the floor shifted again. The words landed with the dull heaviness of truth. I thought of the last months, me counting wins and milestones, her counting how often she had to ask me to look up from the laptop. The realization didn't excuse this. It threaded context through a mess that still stained. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the recorder. "You don't get to blur this," I said, thumb hovering. "You'll say it clean." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Is this a deposition?" "No," I said. "It's for me at 3 a.m., so I don't gaslight myself tomorrow." My wife closed her eyes, then nodded once. "I cheated," she said to the tiny red light. "With Lena. I lied to you. I snuck out. I told you I was working. I'm sorry." The last 2 words shook, but they were steady enough to capture. I stopped the recording and the quiet felt different, less like a cliff, more like a flat field after a storm, ruined but navigable. "Do you love her?" I asked. The question hovered, terrible and necessary. She swallowed. "I don't know how to answer that without hurting you more." "That's an answer," I said. Lena stepped forward, blanket slipping an inch lower on my wife's chest. I looked away by reflex and hated the part of me that noticed the curve, the faint sheen of sweat, the way sex leaves a flush that makeup can't fake. Whatever you decide to do, Lena said, don't blow up his life at dawn with half-truths and rage. She meant her husband, my best friend. The thought of him standing where I was standing made bile climb my throat. I'm not you, I said. I won't whisper. I won't hide. But I won't set fire to 4 people because I want the heat. My wife's hand hovered near mine again. I didn't move, and that was its own violence. Please, she said, a word I'd heard from her 100 times in 100 different tones. This one wasn't breathy or playful. It was small and human. Don't decide everything tonight. I already decided one thing, I said. You're coming home now. You're going to pack a bag. You're going to stay at a hotel. Tomorrow, you and I will tell him together. I looked at Lena. And you will tell him tonight that you need to talk. No scripts. No staging. Lena studied me like she was measuring how far I could bend before I'd break. He'll ask if you knew, she said. What will you say? The truth, I said, and felt the words settle back where it belonged. My wife nodded, tears finally spilling. For a second, I almost reached to wipe them, habit's ghost lifting my hand. I let it fall. She gathered her clothes, moved past me close enough that her shoulder brushed my chest. The contact lit a fuse in my body, want racing ahead of sense, and I stepped back fast, like from a flame. At the door, I paused, hand on the knob. This room would go on smelling like them for hours. The couch would remember. The walls would hold the echo of soft voices. I wanted to smash something petty, a frame, a lamp, the false calm. Instead, I said, key under the mat was sloppy. Lena managed a bitter smile. It was meant to feel safe, she said. That's the problem, I answered, and stepped into the cooler air. We drove in separate cars. At home, my wife packed in silence while I sat at the table, hands flat, watching the dent her presence made in the space we'd called ours. She paused at the doorway with the small suitcase and looked at me like a person looks back at a house they're not sure they'll ever enter again. Do I call you when I get there? She asked. You send the hotel name, I said. And tomorrow at 10, we call him. My throat tightened on the last word. He had been the one I called when my father died. He was the first person I'd told when I decided to propose. The betrayal had too many edges to hold all at once. She nodded and left. The door clicked. The apartment exhaled, the way a body does after a cry. I poured water and didn't drink it. I sat in the chair and felt both emptied and overfull. When my phone buzzed, I flinched. A text from her, room 412. I'm sorry. I set the phone face down and stared at the ceiling until the white swam. The truth was out of the dark. It hadn't killed me. Not yet. Tomorrow would be the day with the real blades. Calls, confessions, whatever comes after a secret dies in daylight. Tonight was for breathing. And for one more decision. I would not let rage write the rest of this story. If there had to be fire, I wanted it to be controlled, hot enough to cauterize, not destroy. I stood, finally, and walked to the bedroom. The pillows still held her shape. I laid my head in the hollow and inhaled. Not to torture myself. To remember that love had been real once. And because of that, I could tell the truth without lying to myself about what I wanted. Sleep came in pieces. When the first piece loosened its grip, dawn was bruising the window. In a few hours, I'd call my best friend and find out whether we were both about to lose everything. The door I shouldn't have opened had swung wide. Now I had to walk through the next one with my eyes open. Morning was a pale bruise across the sky when I dialed his number. My best friend. The man who had stood beside me at my wedding, who had carried me through the wreckage of my father's funeral, who had shared cigars with me in a college dorm when we still believed loyalty was a given. My thumb hovered over the call button, but I pressed anyway. He answered groggy. What's up, man? You good? I almost hung up, but lies had already carved enough scars into my life. No, I said. I'm not. We need to talk. In person. Today. By 10, we sat across from each other in a quiet diner, a place we'd met 100 times before. The smell of bacon and burnt coffee clung to the air. He leaned in, eyes sharp now, not sleepy. What's wrong? I set my phone on the table, the red recording icon waiting like a witness. It's about Lena. His smile froze, cracked at the edges. What about her? She's been with my wife, I said, the words flat, heavy, final. Not just once. Months. He stared, blinked, then laughed once, sharp and humorless. That's insane. I hit play. My wife's voice spilled into the space, trembling but clear. I cheated. With Lena. I lied to you. I snuck out. I told you I was working. I'm sorry. Silence drowned the diner noise. The clink of forks, the chatter of other tables. All of it faded under the weight of that admission. His face went slack, drained of color, then darkened with something heavier than shock. Betrayal. Jesus Christ, he whispered. All this time, he rubbed his forehead, fingers digging into his temple. You knew when? Last night. I told him everything. The house, the key under the mat, the voices. My chest burned with every detail, but I forced them out. He needed the full cut, not a dull blade. He sat back, jaw clenched so hard I could hear it grind. She said she had a book club last night. His laugh came broken. Book club. I let the silence hold. I wanted to reach across the table, to tell him he wasn't alone in this grief, but part of me recoiled. We were both victims, yes, but we were also mirrors of each other's humiliation. He finally spoke, voice rough. What are you going to do? Not sure yet, I said honestly, but I'm done pretending. The circle is broken. I won't keep her secret, and neither should you. He nodded slowly, like a man trying to reassemble himself from shards. We confront them together. The thought of standing shoulder to shoulder with him again, this time not in celebration but in ruin, made my stomach twist. But maybe that was the only way to reclaim some dignity. Two men facing the women who had taken everything sacred and made it theater. I agreed. Together. When I left the diner, the air felt heavier, charged. For the first time in days, I wasn't alone in the dark. But that didn't make the road ahead easier. It just meant there would be witnesses when the truth finally burned everything down. We chose neutral ground, the small conference room at his office after hours. For chairs, one table, fluorescent lights that made everyone look honest against their will. He stood at my side when the elevator chimed. The doors slid open and out stepped the women who had redrawn our lives like a bad map. My wife first, shoulders squared, then Lena, chin high. For a second I saw them as I always had at dinners and holidays. The easy grace, the inside jokes, the way they moved through rooms like they owned them. The picture shattered as soon as the door clicked shut behind them. No one sat. We hovered around the table like pieces that didn't fit the board. He spoke first, voice scraped raw. Sit. They did. We followed. I set my phone face up, the recorder app a silent red-eye between us. You already know what we know, I said to my wife. Say it again. To him. She looked at me, then at him. The words came slower this time, like she had to pull them through wire. I cheated. With Lena. I lied about where I was. I'm sorry. Her voice didn't beg. It didn't explain. It just placed the truth on the table and stepped back from it, hands shaking in her lap. Lena didn't flinch. It wasn't about either of you, she said, which was the kind of sentence that lights a fuse. He flinched for both of us. Not about. He choked on it, swallowed. Started again lower. I have been your fucking alibi for months. Book clubs. Pilates. You used our marriage like a cloak. Lena's mouth pressed into a thin line. I used the only privacy women get without interrogation. Privacy isn't a back door and a key under a mat, I said. My hands were flat on the table. I noticed the whiteness at the knuckles and made myself ease off. It's a conversation you didn't have because you liked the risk more than the work. Silence pressed in. Through the wall, somewhere in the building, a copier hummed the way machinery does when it thinks it's alone. He pivoted to my wife, eyes searching her face like there might still be a version of her that hadn't done this. Why him? Why us? Out of everyone in the world. It wasn't chosen like a target, she said, too quickly, then slowed. It happened. We were already close. We talked when the four of us were together, and when you two would drift into sports or work, we stayed in the kitchen and didn't notice how the clock moved. One night, after you fell asleep on our couch, we were still talking, and then we weren't. The image hit hard. His mouth slack in sleep, the two of them in the light of our stove, the soft slide from talk to touch. Heat surged through me, ugly and familiar, anger braided with hunger, because my body remembered that slide with her and didn't care who else had felt it. I hated that sex could be both weapon and memory in the same breath. Were you going to tell us? I asked. She looked down. No. Why not? Because I didn't want to stop, she said, and the honesty punched the air out of the room. He reached for his water and missed the glass. It wobbled, stilled. Did you love her? Lena answered before my wife could. I don't know what to call it that you won't try to tear down, she said. But I won't let you name it for me. So I get cuckolded and I don't even get vocabulary, he said, laugh thin and toxic. Perfect. I slid the printed map across the table, the late-night dots to the house. Then the photo of the mailbox. LH, I'm not here to dramatize what already burned us, I said. I'm here to ask how deep it goes. Are there other people? Hotels? Money? I watched my wife's eyes for a flinch. There it was, a tiny, treacherous twitch at the word money. The second fuse found. He saw it too. What money? Nothing, my wife said too fast. Lena's jaw tightened. Don't, she warned softly. He turned to her, fury crystallizing into focus. Don't what? Lena's gaze slid to my wife, then back to him. Not here, she said. Not like this. Like what? I asked. Like in daylight, with witnesses? My wife closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet and clear. We talked about leaving, she said. About starting over. It was stupid, like a fantasy you say out loud because it feels powerful. I didn't move money. I didn't touch accounts. Her voice trembled. But we talked about how it could work. The room narrowed to the length of the table. How? I said, though I already knew the shape of the answer. Sell the condo, she said to me, a flinch of shame following the words. Split fairly on paper. Take what I could before it was filed. She, a flick of her head toward Lena, has savings. We mapped a budget. 2 cities we could go where no one knew us. My stomach turned. You built a life out loud while kissing me goodnight. I built a fantasy while suffocating. She shot back, then softened, voice breaking. I know what it sounds like. I hear it. He leaned back, stared at the ceiling like it had answers. How much? He asked, voice dead quiet. What number did you draw next to my name that made the math work? Lena didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence did the counting. I slid my phone closer, thumb hovering the recorder again, then thought better and left it where it was. I didn't want this part trapped in replay. Some truths shouldn't be listened to twice. Okay, I said, hearing my own voice steady itself on a rail. Here is what happens now. You, to my wife, move out. Today becomes paperwork. We freeze joint accounts until the lawyers draft terms. You do not touch savings. If you so much as open a spreadsheet with my name in it, I'll know. You will get what's fair, not what was fantasized. She nodded, shoulders folding around the acceptance like someone slipping into a coat that didn't fit but kept the wind off. He turned to Lena, a man both broken and somehow newly precise. You tell me everything, he said. Every night, every plan, every dollar you thought you could make disappear. If you lie once, we're done, and the next words we exchange will be through attorneys. Lena held his stare. For the first time, I saw fear wrinkle the steel. Okay, she said. You get everything. And you move out, he added. Tonight. Her breath hitched, but she nodded. The fluorescent lights hummed louder, or maybe I was finally hearing them. The 4 of us sat there in the antiseptic brightness, and I realized confrontation isn't fireworks. It's paperwork and policies and the slow, humiliating way you name what happens next. My wife wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand. I know you hate me, she said to me, voice small. You have every right. But I need to say this once. It wasn't about sex only. It was about feeling seen. I didn't know how to ask you to see me without breaking everything. So I broke it anyway. The words landed like pebbles on a grave. Tinder. Too late. He stood first. The rest of us followed, chairs scraping, the sound ungodly loud for such an ordinary thing. We're done here, he said, not a mic drop, just the end of a sentence. At the door, my wife paused near me, close enough that the clean scent of her shampoo slid under the industrial cleaner in the air. For a heartbeat, my body remembered every curve of her, every place my hands knew by instinct, the way her breath would catch when I grazed the inside of her thigh. The ache was physical, a ghost that refused to leave with the living. She must have felt the pull too. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. We didn't move. Goodbye, she said, the word cracking in two. Not yet, I answered. Goodbye comes after signatures. He and I walked them to the elevator. No one reached for anyone. When the doors sealed, he braced his palms on the cool steel and exhaled like someone coming up from a deep dive. You okay? I asked, the question as useless as it was human. No, he said. But I'm not drowning. Neither was I. Not in that moment. The tide would come back. I knew it. Nights would be long. Temptation would whisper. Grief would steal my appetite and then return it in a binge. But the circle had broken and the room had not burned down. That felt like a kind of mercy. We stood in the empty lobby a while, two men in suits that didn't fit the day, and when we finally stepped into the afternoon, the sun looked indifferent and honest. It had watched worse. It would watch what came next. On the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. A notification from the forensic program. New backup detected. Additional deleted items recovered. I didn't open it there. I slipped the device into my pocket, feeling the rectangular weight like an omen. There was more truth buried in glass, and I wasn't done digging. The office confrontation left us raw, stripped of illusions, but not yet free. Truth had detonated in that room, but the fallout was only beginning. That night, I sat at my kitchen table alone, staring at the glow of my phone. The forensic app notification pulsed like a wound I hadn't pressed yet. Additional deleted items recovered. I swiped it open. My stomach tightened as the fragments loaded. The first was a photo, my wife's hand laced with Lena's, resting on a cafe table. The timestamp was from 3 months ago, the same weekend I'd driven to visit my mother. I remembered calling her that night, asking what she was doing. She told me she was home, tired, curled up with a book. The lie looked back at me now in pixels, her smile tilted toward Lena, their coffees half drunk. Then came a voice memo. My finger hovered, but I pressed play. My wife's whisper, low, intimate. I wish I could tell him the truth, but I can't. Not yet. Not until we're ready to leave. The words blurred. Not just cheating. Planning. They weren't dabbling in secrets anymore. They were sketching a future where I was the obstacle. My chest burned with a cold fury. I thought the confrontation table, when she swore it was just fantasy talk. Now here was the proof. Intent. The next morning, I called him. He answered on the first ring, voice hollow but awake. You too. I sent him the files. Silence on the line, then a sharp inhale. So it was more than we thought. Yeah, I said. It always is. By evening, we agreed. Another confrontation, but this time not with questions. With evidence. We picked his house, neutral, but still ours by right. They arrived together, a decision that stung deeper than any words could. Walking side by side, like partners rather than conspirators caught in a lie. My wife's eyes flicked to me, full of rehearsed sorrow, but Lena kept hers forward, cold and steady. I laid the phone on the table, pressed play. The voice memo spilled into the room. My wife's voice again. Not until we're ready to leave. Her face drained. Lena's hardened. He slammed his hand down on the table, so hard the glasses rattled. You were going to leave us. Both of you. And you lied to our faces until the last possible second. My wife reached for me, desperate. It wasn't like that. I pulled my hand back. Then tell me how it was. Because your voice doesn't sound confused. It sounds committed. Lena broke the silence. We didn't go through with it. Not yet, I said. But you intended to. And intent matters. The room spun with words, accusations, fragments of half-truths and tears. My wife sobbed, saying she never wanted to hurt me like this. He shouted until his voice cracked, telling Lena she had destroyed the only thing he thought was untouchable. And me? I sat there, strangely calm, letting the storm rage. I had my answer already. When it quieted, I finally spoke. It's over. Both marriages. You don't get to rewrite that. The papers will be drawn. But you'll remember this moment, because this is when you lost everything. Not last night. Not last month. Right now. They both cried then, different shades of grief. But I didn't. Not anymore. Walking out into the night with my friend beside me, I felt hollow, yes, but also lighter. The circle was broken, the lies stripped bare, and the ground beneath us was finally solid again, even if it was scorched. Tomorrow, lawyers. Tomorrow, division of assets. But tonight, for the first time in months, I could breathe without wondering what she was hiding. Revenge isn't rage. Rage is sloppy, loud, short-lived. Revenge is patience sharpened into a blade. I'd spent weeks filing mine until it gleamed. We agreed not to whisper anymore. He and I. We weren't brothers in joy anymore, but we were allies in betrayal, and that counted for something. When his firm hosted its annual charity gala, a polished event where spouses, clients, and neighbors all mingled in glittering clothes, I told him I was coming. He nodded once, already knowing why. The ballroom was a flood of light and glass. music curling through the air. My wife stood near the bar in a silk dress I'd once bought her, Lena at her side. They looked untouchable, beautiful, dangerous. Everyone else saw wives supporting their husbands, smiling for photos. I saw co-conspirators still daring to believe they owned the room. At 8 sharp, I walked to the podium. I'd been invited to speak. Years of friendship earned me that stage. My heart hammered as I looked at the sea of faces, but when my eyes found hers, trembling just enough that only I noticed, calm washed over me. I was asked to say a few words about trust tonight. I began. Trust in business, trust in community, and trust in marriage. A ripple passed through the crowd, polite curiosity. I continued. Trust is what lets us leave our homes in the hands of others. It's what lets us believe the person lying next to us at night is exactly who they say they are. And when that trust is broken, it isn't just a private wound. It's a public scar. My wife shifted, Lena's jaw clenched. I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped the screen. The speakers hummed to life. My wife's voice poured into the room. I cheated. With Lena. I lied. I'm sorry. Gasps cracked across the hall. A woman dropped her champagne flute. A man coughed into silence. My wife went pale as marble. Lena's hand gripped her arm hard enough to leave marks. This is the sound of betrayal, I said, voice even. Not whispered in bedrooms. Not hidden in late-night drives. Out loud, where it belongs. This is what happens when secrets think they can outlive daylight. The silence was suffocating, thick with shock and pity and awe. I let it breathe for a beat, then added, some scars, I promise you, are meant to be seen. I stepped down, leaving the recording still playing on loop until someone yanked the cord. My wife's sobs chased me through the crowd. Lena's hissed words followed close behind. People turned, stared, whispered. The glittering room was no longer theirs. Outside, the night air was sharp and cold. He joined me moments later, face set, eyes hard. That, he said, was the funeral they deserved. I nodded. For the first time, I felt the weight lift, not because the pain was gone, but because I'd given it form, carved it into something visible, undeniable. Revenge hadn't rebuilt what they broke, but it had burned their lies to ash in front of the world. And sometimes, that's enough.